Everything's been given a good coat of red primer, quite a few coats actually, so it's quite thick. I haven't primed in areas where I'm going to weld, although I missed a couple there. Hence on the back of the panel here I've left some pieces which are just covered with zinc, but the amount of heat that'll go into the welds is liable to burn the undercoat, so I didn't put any on those parts. But it's got quite a thick coating, and because there are so many welds, I'm decided not to paint this in enamel, because I'm probably going to burn the enamel on the inside of the panels. Now, I could, I suppose, keep it away from the welds, but even there will be heat and the paint will blister. So I've decided not to do that. Having said that, it's all black enamel on the inside of the air duct, so there is some protection. So what I'm about to do is to actually put this panel on and attach it with tech screws. Now, I don't know whether you can see them, there's a number of holes in here, small holes. That's where the tech screws go in and hold everything in position. So I've got to make sure that these plug welds are flush with the panels beneath them, so I can get a good weld penetration. Now, there is one piece I've got to put back on before I do that. Just remember, before I forget, which is this panel here. It's got to be welded on first, so I've got to weld that back on. I've got to make sure I've got the exact position, because it's got to line up with plug welds on the outside, which is this large hole here. That's where the windscreen wiper motor goes. So I'll do that now before I forget. The world's worst if I do all of these welds and then remember I forgot to put that in. So sorry about that. There are a lot of welds. I'm actually going to count them. I'm sure it's over 200 welds I've got to put in. That's just to get this front panel on. So just interesting to know how many you've done. So anyway, I'll put that panel in, and then I'll start to tech screw the front panel on. Now I've coated the inside of the panel with a zinc spray, 99% zinc. That's on top of the red primer, so it certainly won't rust in my lifetime, or perhaps even my grandchildren's lifetime. Same on the inside of the front panel, done that. I've been around and cleaned up all of the plug weld holes, both in the panel itself and also along the top panel, so they're now all even. What I've got to do next is to put this panel on, and I'll just clean where these plug welds here, where they go through the panel, and I'll clean up on the inside here. Now I'm sure that the zinc coating will take a MIG weld through, but I'll scrape any paint away under the plugs. It'll just make it a much cleaner weld, and a little bit extra work, but it's something that's well worth it when you come to weld it. I've actually looked at, I put the panel on before I sprayed it to make sure that I've got sufficient tech screws to hold it in place. So I should have that correct now. So as I say, the next step will be to clean where the plug welds go through, and then I'll put the panel on, screw it up, and then start the welding process. Now I've screwed the front panel on, all the Tech screws are in place. I've filled the major bolt holes with bolts so I don't get any stray bits of weld in the threads, so they're right. There are 285 welds to do. What I'll be doing, I'm doing it over a couple of days so I don't overheat the panel. I'll probably start in the middle and then work out, but as I say, it'll take quite some time. Well, I've finally welded the panel back into place. It's taken a total of 23 hours and about 350 welds. That's a hell of a lot of welds and a lot of cleanup on those welds. But it's all in now, it's all solid, and I've now proceeded to start to fill in the end panels. Side bulkhead, I can start to probably fit that, but before I do that I've got to put these side panels on. They go on here, so I've got to fit those. Yet more welds, lots more welds, but I've got to get that on so I can actually get the side bulkhead on. But I'll probably fit the outer sill as well, just to make sure I've got everything fitting where it should be. So I've got to make sure that all fits. The front panel went on well. The thing I've got to do now is to, or when I've welded all this up, I'll probably go ahead and seal it. Now, there was sealant everywhere in this. There was sealant between this panel and the top panel. Along that seam there, you can just see there was sealant along here. There's sealant down here. There'll be sealant in there. There was quite a lot of sealant in the wiper mount here. So there was sealant all around here, around the edges there. So I thought I'd actually do that progressively. Actually sealant up in there, there's a gap between the panels, that was all sealed. So I'll probably do it progressively rather than weld everything in place and then start the sealant. So I'll start the sealant with this front bulkhead panel. As I say, I'll put these little side pieces in and make sure they're in the right position. I'll weld those. I won't weld the side panels. I can probably now proceed to welding these bulkhead panels here, footwell panels. So I'll do those as well. So there's a lot of welding to do. These have all been fitted, of course. It's just a case of I've got the Tech screws in, but I haven't drilled any plug holes, so I've got to do all of that. So there's still quite a lot to do. The longer I work on this vehicle, the more I realise that nothing is meant to fit exactly when you try and put it back together. Now, whether it be a replacement panel or this existing piece that I'm actually trying to put in place now, nothing actually goes back exactly the way you plan. So things have to be slightly modified. Now, not lots, but to get this panel in, which I'll just slide it in roughly where it came, goes in there, but it's meant to come back in line with that, just on the inside of that hole there. The reason it's not coming back in is that this replacement panel I've put on here at the end of the bulkhead, it's just too wide, so I've got to trim that back. So that's the first thing. And secondly, I've got to make sure that it will fit properly in place with the new inner and outer sill. Now, it's going to be a little bit of modification there, not much, but a small amount around here where I've got to allow for this filler piece here to actually come and fit flush with that. Now at the moment it won't quite do that, so I've got to make some alteration there. So the first thing I've decided to do is to, I'll just put this panel down, is to make sure that the outer sill is actually in the position it needs to be in terms of its final position. Now that's what I'm doing at the moment. Now, as I said, it's a bit silly to assume that this outer sill will fit, and will fit exactly, and it doesn't. So, not too worried about that. I guess it's just to be expected, and I'll just have to make some adjustments to fit it. Now, where it's out, at this stage where it's out, obviously a little bit of fettling in around here, but the I'll call this the bottom flange, doesn't fit flush with the floor. A few parts where it's actually, this is a little bit out of balance because of the distribution of weight. I don't have a pin in, so I'll just pause the video while I put a pin in place to hold them. Sorry about that, it's very finely balanced. I've added this piece of metal on this side so the car is weighted to this side and it'll rotate on its own. I've now put a pin in so it'll just hold that. As I was saying, this flange is not fitting flush with the floor, so it's sitting up a bit here. It's pretty flush in the centre, so I've got to fold that down. The curve here appears to be right. I've still got to recheck that. That appears to be right, but the curve at the rear, this section here, this curve here was not right. In fact, let's put the light back here. Hang on a second. It's a bit hard working with one hand. Right. Now, this curve here, not quite right, and I've already shrunk the metal here a little bit to bring the curve down. It's almost down in the position at the end there, but it's sitting up a bit here, so I've got a little bit more work to do to get this to curve around more. Maybe a little bit more shrinking in here will do that, and then I'll just probably force this around, maybe using a round mandrel. I'll find something that I can push that around, and then perhaps folding this flange down a bit. So anyway, what I want to be able to do is get this flange flat along the floor where it should be. I'll tack screw that in. I've already checked, and I'll recheck the position of the sill in terms of whether it's too far forward, too far back. At this stage, the initial check is that it's right. It should fit the curve of the guard there, so that'll be right. But once I've got this right and in the correct position, so I'll tack screw this in, and then I'll come back to looking at the adjustments I may need to make down here. And as I said, that's to fit that little filler piece here, this one, which holds, I assume that's the bonnet catch, the bolts there. I need to get that right so I can weld that in. And before I weld that in, of course, I'll make sure that the side panel here fits properly. Now, it's very close at the moment, but I need to make a few adjustments to get that to fit in properly. So, once again, small adjustments everywhere. And while I'm at it, I'll probably put at least the inner frame for the door in. Whether I put the door skin on or not, I'm not sure yet. I may or may not. I'll think about that, to make sure that the door alignment is also in line with the side panel there. So there's a few things to do, certainly before I start welding this piece in here. But like all things, the more time you spend on this, the better end result you have, and when it comes to putting things together, everything should fit in the correct position.